Today, we're going to be talking about, again, uncommon questions for commercial realtors, investors, salespeople, and business owners. Bart, what question would you like to start with?
All right. So I have put together some good things that I think do not come up too often. Sometimes they do. I'm going to jump in with something that I think a lot of people who follow you are going to ask. And that's if they're a part-time realtor, someone who is a part-time realtor and they have a full-time job doing something else, what kind of advice do you have to give? Right. And I think the questions would span like everything from when do I stop being part-time and when do I go full-time? How do I get there?
To honestly the contrary, and I say this to a lot of people these days, which is don't quit your day job. If you're working a full-time job, work real estate part-time until the real estate income is equal to or greater than the income, right? Especially if you're in a full-time job and you're in your 30s or 40s, you got kids, you got a house, you got mortgages and all that kind of stuff. It can take a while to close some deals in the commercial real estate world. It can take some time and you need to be prepared for that. It could take 6 or 12 months to close a deal, right? Like it's maybe longer, depending on what you're working on. So I just think it's important to say like, hey, if you're, a full-time corporate employee, right? If you're in a full-time employee right now and you want to be in the commercial real estate world, awesome. Work part-time in the real estate world. Have this be the craziest side hustle of your life. Allow this to be something where you're going to take every waking hour that you're not working your 9 to 5. And even if you're working from home, guys, and you can work 3 or 4 hours and get by doing the work that you need to be doing at your quote 9 to 5 job and work all those extra hours that you possibly can building your commercial real estate business, that is going to pay tenfold rather than you saying, hey, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to go make it happen. And then 12 months later, you're like, I'm out of money. This is a problem, right? Because it's about longevity of this career. Right. It's not about, trying to make a quick buck. It's like, how can I stay in this industry longer? Because the longer you're in it, the more money you'll make.
You're a new realtor, right? You just got your license. You've got $125 in your pocket. What are you doing?
Get out of the industry. Get out of the industry. You don't have enough money. I'm not even kidding you. Get a part-time job, get something for income. Good. If you have less than honestly even a few $1,000, unless you're like 20 years old and living with your parents, which is fine, where you could spend very little money, which, I do employ a number of them. That's okay. And at the same time, I still tell them, go get a part-time job. Even when you're living with your parents, hey, what is your monthly bills? Go make enough money where you can pay your monthly bills. If it's $1,000 or $5,000, make enough to cover your monthly nut. And then you can take all the rest of the time, because you don't have to make an abundant amount of money. All the rest of the time, energy, and effort goes into selling property.
And that way you're not stressed, right?
Exactly. Your bills are paid.
So shifting more towards general sales now, which I think will apply to the wider audience here. What kind of characteristics do you think someone will make it in sales, right? And so
it's a great question.
I'll just give you an example. Real estate is one of those things that's commission based, right? So
100%.
People essentially, you've got it or you don't, or you've got to get the skills or you're not going to. What kind of characteristics in that regard are you looking for? And I'll just give you an example. I tell people all the time, unless you're very willing to accept failure, like entrepreneurship's not for you. If you are not willing to be uncomfortable, then it's not for you. So like, it's not made for everybody. What are you looking for in that regard?
Got to learn to eat rejection for breakfast. So I think that a couple of characteristics. So one of which is drive.
I'd love to see an image of you eating rejection for breakfast right there.
Here you go, team. Put that in there. So, I think that it's important. One of which is drive. You must have drive. You must have some level of, motivation and drive to do what you're doing. Getting up every single day and going to work and pounding phones is not fun. It is not pretty. It is not sexy, but it sure as hell pays. So I think drive is a big piece of this. Another aspect is discipline. You must have incredibly high discipline. I love people in the military. I love people who have proven other aspects of discipline. Where I like people who love going to the gym because it's an aspect of proving that that you have discipline. People who like cold plunging, people who like all that kind of thing. Where if you're coming to me and you're like, hey, I ask about what are your habits? What do you like to do? And they say things like working out, going cold plunging and everything. I think you'll be a fantastic salesperson because you understand discipline at a high level. I think consistency is a huge aspect, which is another thing can be proven from people who like to work out, go cold plunging. Like, how frequently do you like to do these things? Do you have routine? Like you're really stuck to a routine? Like, hey, I do this every single day. I love seeing that when you have regimented schedules, because if you can do that in sales, again, you'll be incredibly successful. Another aspect of it is coachability, where you don't take anything personal, where you're just like, hey, I'm just here to be this is me all the time. Literally I do it to you. Hey, what do you think about this? I'm just constantly, I want to learn. I'll consume. I never think I'm 100% right about anything. I'm totally open to other aspects or viewpoints of it, and having huge levels of coachability where I want to be a forever student. And I think people who are forever students will always do better in business than people who think they know it all.
Is there a trend? Are there certain sectors you see, things that are shifting that is changing the way you're doing your business today?
In the residential world, I think there's a lot of things that are changing that, people don't realize. That I feel like buyers agents are becoming completely irrelevant, where most of the time it's really just going to be about the listing agents. So I think that a big part of this is, like, again, in the residential world, if you're not going after sellers, which I've been preaching about this for 10 years, for frick's sake, it's like, if you're not going after sellers, you're never going to last, right? Like, listing agents
Right.
last, buyers agents are going to really be a thing of the past. So just that's a quick thing for residential. For commercial, I want to spend time on this, because in commercial real estate, the old corporate mindset, okay, the old BS corporate mindset of only going after listings, which is like literally how these, the core four huge organizations, CBRE, Marcus, Colliers, Newmark, a lot of these huge organizations, they're pitching, they're literally just going for listings, and then they leave a bunch of money on the table. It's the funniest thing ever. And they literally look at our philosophy, which is, we specifically have a group of investors that we find great deals for. Our intention is not to list properties for sale, because the only properties that will ever get listed for sale are very expensive, overpriced stuff. Because if it's
Right.
if it's exactly what the buy box is for Mr. Investor like you, Bart, if you go, hey, I'm looking for a $10 million building, here are my return metrics that I'm looking to achieve, and I find it, why on planet Earth would I list that property for sale? That makes absolutely zero sense. I just go to the seller, hey, get me some info, I gather the information from the seller, I present it to you, you go, okay, it checks out. Or maybe I want to make an offer at 9 million. I'll go to the seller and say, hey, I got an offer for X price. And then I'll try to negotiate something where everybody's happy. And it's like, what was the purpose of ever trying to list that property for sale? It makes no sense. So it's like, the people who continue to thinking the philosophies of 20, 30, 40 years ago, and listening from the guys who are dinosaurs in the industry, because you've been in the industry for 50 years and it's been done the same way ever since you were born. I'm sorry, it's going to be changing. So if you want to make a lot of money in this industry, it's learning how to think and work like an investor. The more you can act as the investor, more so than the broker, you're going to capture so much more of the deal flow that you're generating. And it's just thinking with that different philosophy. Other than that, I think AI, I think people, like, really quick, just to talk about it, because I know we're going to do an episode on AI soon. AI, to me, is going to be a huge opportunity for outsourcing all of 100% of the support work. But you can't AI a conversation and negotiation with the seller. You can't AI, reach, like, as much as they're coming out with something like, these cold calling software, eventually you still need to get on the phone with the person. So as much as AI is going to, allow it to be an easier process to getting to that point, 100%, and even create some simple systems and create opportunities and processes for the back end part of it, a lot of that, you still need to understand the world of communication, negotiation, how to have a conversation with somebody in the world of sales. You still need to have that skill, because you can't AI that.
So, mistake turned lesson. What is a mistake you've made in your real estate career that, and I'm sure there's
So many.
plenty, but what's a big one you can think back to where you're like, oh, that fundamentally changed my entire view on real estate or how I do things, or something like that?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just rip through a few real fast. Number one, I've made incredibly poor hires where I hired, number one, way too many support staff, just completely unneeded. I learned, this is an example of, like, I listened to people who are dinosaurs in the industry, and I made mistakes that cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit that I did not need. I had way too much support staff for my teams. One. Number two, I've hired way too many salespeople, which I had no reason in being to having so many salespeople. I hired the wrong salespeople. I trusted a lot of people in regards to hiring, so I made every mistake in the freaking book, and I'm sure there's might be many more that I'll make in regards to hiring. Two, I got comfortable. I've made mistakes of getting way too comfortable when it comes to, I've made a lot of money at one point, and I was like, got really comfortable, so I slowed down on a lot of things that really drive revenue. So I've gotten really comfortable, and I made the mistake of slowing down when I should have been speeding up, which cost me a lot of money as well.
I think that's classic high achiever thing, right? When
Yeah.
you feel comfortable for a little bit, you let your foot off the gas, and then you turn around 90 days later and it's like, why aren't there as many sales coming in?
Yeah, and even for me, like, sales were still coming in. I just was working less. And it was like sort of like a few years ago when I was talking about, I kept saying retired. It was like this stupid joke, right? Which like it got really, but the problem is like it was really a thing where like I was making almost $1 million, basically $1 million a year without working too hard. And then it wasn't even about me not making great money. It was about the fact that of like, if I could do this working 10 hours a week, imagine what I could do working 100. And I was like, I got back into the mindset because like what got me here won't get me there kind of thing. I was like, hey, like $1 million isn't what I thought it was. And I was like, hey, I have so much more potential. And like I'm using, it's like I'm in a Ferrari going 3 miles an hour. I got so much potential under the hood here, and I'm like I need to put this to work. So that was another mistake. And then let's say last thing, mistake wise, was probably not investing more time, energy, and effort investing in myself. And I invested hundreds of thousands of dollars investing in me. I should have still spent more money investing in my own, like learning from mentors, really paying money to get into, paying more money, like doubling down on that.
We should really do an episode on that alone, investing in yourself.
Yeah, I wish I did so much. I mean, I still do so much of it today, but I should still be spending way more money on investing in myself.
What's an unconventional negotiation tactic that you've used or encountered that was surprisingly effective?
What I see, let me talk about a mistake that I feel like people make, and then I can go into what I do differently. What I see a lot of people do is that when they submit offers on properties, which I'm sure you hear about this even with deals, is that you just submit the offer on the opportunity. Hey, I'm going to submit an offer. You send an email, and then you do this, right? You just kind of sit back, you cross your fingers, hope and pray somebody responds, right? For me, I do every negotiation over the phone. I am always like, I'll send you an email, and I want to get you on the phone and speak to you about the offer I just sent you. Because if I leave you to your own devices, the odds of you giving me a super positive response, unless it's exactly what you were asking for, is low. So I typically will say, I love doing 100% of my negotiations. Even if I present you an initial offer, I want to do it over the phone because I want to hear you think through the offer. I want to hear you think, because when you say certain things, I'm paying attention. You know, when you go, like I submit an offer on one of your buildings, Bart, and I go, hey, I'll give you $1 million when you said you wanted 2 million. And you go, and the first thing out of your mouth is, and you start thinking instead of going, this is freaking ridiculous or whatever, right? Because the people who go, this is freaking, immediately go to freaking ridiculous, I know their level of motivation is nowhere there. But if you start going, okay. Right. And you're considering it, I'm like, just the fact that I can hear you processing the information here, I know I can get you lower than your $2 million number.